Picture this: a Buddhist monastery. Thousands of monks, women and children huddled inside wooden temples perched on a sacred mountain. Below them, an army surrounds the base, blocking every escape route. Then, the order comes down from their commander, a man they call the Demon King. Burn it all. 20,000 people died that day. Not in battle, in flames, deliberately, systematically. The man who gave that order, he's considered one of Japan's greatest heroes. His name was Oda Nobunaga. In the next 30 minutes, you'll see how a warlord became a monster who burned 20,000 women and children alive, and why Japan still can't decide if he was their greatest visionary or their most terrifying war criminal. This is the story of how one man's brutality dragged an entire nation into modernity, whether it wanted to go or not. Because sometimes, the people who change history are the ones we should fear most. When Oda Nobunaga walked into his father's funeral in 1551, he didn't look like a grieving son. He looked like a punk. His hair hung loose and wild. His clothes were dirty, dishevelled, completely inappropriate for a formal ceremony. And then, in front of everyone, he grabbed a handful of incense powder and threw it at his father's altar. Not placed. Threw. The assembled nobles gasped. His own retainers looked away in shame. This wasn't grief. This was disrespect. This was madness. They called him Owari no Utsuka, the great fool of Owari. At 16 years old, Nobunaga had inherited a minor domain in central Japan, and everyone, thought he was unfit to rule. His own family plotted against him. His advisors whispered about replacing him. Even his mother openly favoured his younger brother. But here's what they didn't understand. Nobunaga wasn't playing their game. He was building a new one. While other samurai lords obsessed over honour and tradition, Nobunaga trained with peasants. While they practiced calligraphy and tea ceremony, he learned firearms from Portuguese merchants. While they wore elegant silk, he wore cotton so he could move faster. Every insult, every sneer, every moment of mockery, he absorbed it all, learned from it, and waited. Because Nobunaga understood something that would define his entire reign. In a world of rigid traditions, the one who breaks the rules first wins. The first people who had to die? His own relatives. In 1556, his younger brother Nobuyuki, the one their mother preferred, the one the clan elders thought should be lord, launched a coup. It wasn't subtle. Half of the Oda retainers joined him. It should have been the end of Nobunaga's rule before it really began. But Nobunaga didn't panic. He crushed the rebellion in a single decisive battle, then did something unexpected. He forgave his brother, publicly embraced him, welcomed him back. His mother begged him to show mercy. The clan elders praised his wisdom and restraint. Everyone thought the fool had finally learned about honour and family. They were wrong. A year later, Nobunaga called his brother to his castle. "Come alone," he said. "Let's reconcile properly." Nobuyuki came, probably relieved, maybe even grateful. The moment he entered the castle, Nobunaga's men cut him down. No ceremony, no honour, just cold execution. When questioned, Nobunaga's answer was simple. He betrayed me once. He would have done it again. Why wait? This wasn't the thinking of a traditional samurai. This was something else. Something colder, more calculating. And it was just the beginning. June 1560. Nobunaga, aged 26, faces total annihilation. Imagawa Yoshimoto, one of the most powerful daimyo in Japan, is marching on Owari with 25,000 soldiers. Nobunaga has maybe 3,000 troops, and most of them are poorly trained peasant conscripts. Every military advisor tells him the same thing: surrender, negotiate, flee. Survival is the only option. Nobunaga listens to them all. Then he does the opposite. He performs a ritual at the Atsuta shrine, asking the gods for victory. Not survival, victory. Then he leads his tiny force directly toward the massive enemy army. It looks like suicide. His men think he's finally lost his mind completely, but Nobunaga has been watching, waiting, learning his enemy's patterns. He knows Yoshimoto is arrogant, comfortable, convinced of his own invincibility. He knows the Imagawa army is stretched thin along the road, celebrating their easy conquest with sake and overconfidence, and he knows exactly when the afternoon thunderstorm will hit. As rain pounds the earth, Nobunaga strikes. Not at the army, at Yoshimoto himself. He leads a direct assault on the commander's position during the storm, when visibility is zero and chaos reigns. The samurai guards barely have time to draw their swords. Nobunaga's forces cut through them like fire through paper. When the rain clears, Imagawa Yoshimoto is dead. His head is on a spike. His army, leaderless, confused, terrified, collapses. 25,000 soldiers flee from 3,000. Nobunaga takes Yoshimoto's prized sword as a trophy, but more than that, he takes something invaluable, a reputation. After Okazama, people stop calling him the fool. They start calling him something else, the Demon King. Here's where Nobunaga shows his true genius and his complete amorality. In 1562, he makes an alliance with Tokugawa Ieyasu, a minor lord who would eventually become shogun. But this isn't a friendship. This is a calculated arrangement between two predators who recognize they can hunt more efficiently together than apart. No grand declarations of loyalty, no poetic oaths, just a cold agreement. We use each other until we don't need to. Then, in 1568, Nobunaga does something that shocks all of Japan. He marches on Kyoto, the capital, with a puppet shogun named Ashikaga Yoshiaki. He doesn't claim power for himself. He doesn't declare himself emperor or shogun. Instead, he installs Yoshiaki as the legitimate ruler, positioning himself as the humble servant who restored order. Brilliant. Ruthless. Absolutely calculated, because now Nobunaga has legitimacy without responsibility. He has power without the target on his back that comes with a formal title. He can act in the shogun's name while making all the actual decisions. It's the perfect con. For about 5 years it works beautifully. Nobunaga expands his territory, crushes rival clans, and builds his power base. The puppet shogun gives speeches. Nobunaga pulls the strings. But then Yoshiaki makes a fatal mistake. He starts believing he's actually in charge. He begins plotting with other daimyo, trying to build a coalition against Nobunaga. He forgets who put him in power. He forgets who can take it away. Nobunaga doesn't. In 1573, he deposes the shogun he installed, just removes him. The Ashikaga shogunate, the ruling dynasty that had governed Japan for 237 years, ends. Not with a dramatic battle, not with a grand declaration, just ends. Because Nobunaga decided it was inconvenient. The message is clear. There are no sacred institutions anymore, no untouchable positions, no rules except power. Nobunaga isn't just conquering Japan, he's rewriting its entire social contract, and that's when the killing becomes systematic. Let me tell you about Mount Hiei. For over 700 years, the Enryakuji temple complex on Mount Hiei had been one of the most sacred sites in Japan. Thousands of Buddhist monks lived there, studying, meditating, preserving religious texts. It wasn't just a temple, it was a symbol of spiritual authority, of continuity, of everything that made Japanese civilization civilized. It was also, in Nobunaga's view, a military threat. The monks of Mount Hiei had armies. They had fortifications. They had political influence and economic power. They meddled in wars, supported rival daimyo, and generally acted like they were above the secular world. They believed their sacred status made them untouchable. They believed wrong. In September 1571, Nobunaga surrounds Mount Hiei with 30,000 troops. He sends one message to the monks: leave now or die. Many monks refuse. They're protected by Buddha, they say. They're too sacred to attack, they say. No samurai lord would dare commit such sacrilege, they say. Nobunaga's response, according to multiple historical accounts, was chilling. If Buddha truly exists, let him try to save them. He meant it. What happens next is systematic genocide. Nobunaga's forces don't just attack the monastery, they encircle it completely, blocking every path down the mountain. Then they set fire to the buildings, all of them. Temples that had stood for centuries become infernos. Monks who try to flee are cut down. Women who hide are dragged out and killed. Children are shown no mercy. The historical records, even those written by people sympathetic to Nobunaga, describe the massacre with horror. The Shincho Koki, the official chronicle written by Nobunaga's retainer Otaguchi, doesn't shy away from the brutality. Portuguese Jesuit missionary Luis Frois, who was in Japan at the time, recorded the death toll at approximately 20,000 people. Think about that number, 20,000. That's not a battle, that's extermination. The fires burned for days. The smell of burning flesh could be detected miles away. Survivors, and there were very few, described scenes of absolute horror. Monks burned alive while chanting sutras. Families huddled together as the flames consumed them. The screaming, they said, seemed to never end. When his own advisors questioned the decision, Nobunaga's response was documented in multiple sources. He said something that reveals everything about his worldview. They opposed me, they supported my enemies. Their sacred status is meaningless. There is no Buddha protecting them. There is only power. This isn't just military strategy. This is ideological warfare. Nobunaga isn't just killing enemies. He's killing the idea that anything is sacred beyond power itself. Here's what makes Mount Hiei so significant. It wasn't an accident or a loss of control. It was deliberate policy. Before Mount Hiei, warfare in Japan had rules. Sacred sites were generally protected. Non-combatants were usually spared. There was a code, however imperfectly followed, that separated civilized warfare from barbarism. Nobunaga looked at those rules and saw weakness. He saw enemies hiding behind sacred status. He saw power structures that couldn't be touched because of tradition. He saw obstacles to his vision of a unified Japan, so he eliminated them. All of them. According to the Taikoki, another contemporary chronicle, Nobunaga explained his philosophy to his generals. Don't talk to me about honor, talk to me about winning and losing. It's a quote that summarizes his entire approach to power. Brutal pragmatism stripped of every moral consideration except effectiveness. And here's the darkest part. It worked. After Mount Hiei, no religious institution dared oppose him openly. The message was received. Sacred status means nothing. Buddha won't save you. Only submission will. After Mount Hiei, everything changes. Nobunaga's campaign against Buddhism becomes systematic. He targets the Iko-iki, militant Buddhist communities that had resisted samurai rule for decades. These weren't just monasteries. They were fortified communes where peasants and monks fought side by side, creating autonomous zones outside feudal control. Nobunaga hated them, not just because they opposed him militarily, but because they represented an alternative to his vision of total hierarchical control. In 1574, he besieges their fortress at Nagashino. The siege lasts months. Finally, the defenders offer to surrender. Nobunaga accepts. The gates open. Thousands of people, men, women, children, walk out believing they'll be spared. Nobunaga's forces surround them and set the entire area ablaze. It's Mount Hiei again, but worse, because this time they were promised mercy. This time they surrendered believing in samurai honor. This time Nobunaga deliberately lied to maximize the death toll. According to Freus's accounts, approximately 20,000 more people died at Nagashino, the same number as Mount Hiei, burned alive, deliberately, methodically. In 1580, after a decade-long siege, he forces the surrender of Ishiyama Honganji, the headquarters of the True Pure Land Buddhist sect. This time, and this is crucial, he doesn't massacre them. He's learned to use selective mercy as a weapon. Some enemies get burned, others get absorbed. The key is keeping everyone guessing who's next. One by one, the Buddhist institutions that had defined Japanese spiritual life for centuries are crushed, burned, or forced into submission. Nobunaga isn't trying to eliminate Buddhism entirely. He's too pragmatic for that. But he's making it clear that religious authority bows to military power. Always. Some historians call this secularization. Others call it what it is, cultural terrorism. But here's the complicated part. The Buddhist monasteries weren't innocent victims. By the 1570s, Mount Hiei had become a military power. The monks, or Sohei, warrior monks, regularly interfered in political disputes, burned rival temples, and extorted peasants. Enryaku-ji owned vast estates worked by essentially enslaved farmers. They hoarded wealth while people starved. They used their sacred status as a shield while acting like any other warlord. Nobunaga's brutality destroyed them, yes, but it also broke their stranglehold on Japanese society. He made room for something new. The economic and social reforms he implemented afterward genuinely improved lives for many peasants and merchants. That doesn't make the massacre justified. 20,000 people, many of them innocent, died screaming in flames. No amount of political context erases that, but it makes it complicated. And that's the thing about Nobunaga. He's always complicated. Always operating in moral grey zones where atrocities serve progressive ends and liberation comes through terror. It's why we're still arguing about him 450 years later. While he's burning monasteries, Nobunaga is also building the future. In 1543, Portuguese traders introduced firearms to Japan. Most samurai lords viewed guns with disdain. They were crude, loud, ungentlemanly weapons that violated the noble art of swordsmanship. Using a gun was like cheating. Real warriors fought with blades and honour. Nobunaga looked at guns and saw the end of the samurai class. He didn't just adopt firearms, he revolutionized their use. In 1575, at the Battle of Nagashino, he proved exactly how devastating this new technology could be. His enemy, Takeda Katsuyori, commanded perhaps the finest cavalry in Japan, 15,000 samurai warriors, famous for their devastating mounted charges. Traditional warfare said you couldn't stop a Takeda cavalry charge. It was suicide to even try. Nobunaga built wooden palisades to funnel the cavalry into kill zones. Then he positioned 3,000 arquebusiers in rotating ranks. One rank fires, falls back to reload, while the second rank fires, then the third rank fires. Continuous volley fire, revolutionary combined arms tactics that wouldn't become standard in Europe for another century. The Takeda cavalry charges directly into a wall of bullets that never stops. It's not a battle, it's an execution. According to the Mikawa Monogatari, a chronicle from the Tokugawa side, over 10,000 Takeda samurai died that day. The greatest cavalry force in Japan, representing centuries of martial tradition, was annihilated in hours. Not by superior samurai skill, not by honour or tradition, by technology and cold tactical thinking. After Nagashino, every other daimyo scrambles to acquire firearms. The age of the samurai sword as the dominant weapon is over. Nobunaga killed it, just like he's killing everything else about old Japan. But Nobunaga isn't just a military innovator. He's rebuilding Japanese society from the ground up. He establishes rakuichi rakuza, free markets. Before Nobunaga, guilds and monopolies controlled all trade. Want to sell rice? You need guild permission. Want to set up a shop? Pay the monopoly. It's a system designed to keep the powerful wealthy and the poor trapped. Nobunaga smashes it. He issues edicts declaring that anyone can trade anything anywhere in his territories. Guild privileges eliminated, monopoly rights abolished. Economic freedom for everyone. Samurai, peasant, merchant doesn't matter. The result? His domains explode with economic growth. Merchants flock to his castle towns. Innovation flourishes, tax revenues soar. His enemies, stuck with their traditional guild systems, can't compete economically. Nobunaga doesn't just conquer territory, he makes his territory so prosperous that people want to join him voluntarily. He builds infrastructure, roads, bridges, ports. He standardizes measurements and currency. He creates a merit-based system where talent matters more than birth. Peasants can become generals if they're good enough. Nobles can lose everything if they're incompetent. One of his most famous generals, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, started as a sandal-bearer. Literally the lowest possible position. Under the old system, he would have died a peasant. Under Nobunaga, he became the second most powerful man in Japan. It's radical, revolutionary, and it's working. In 1576, Nobunaga begins construction of Azuchi Castle on the shores of Lake Biwa. It takes 3 years to complete. When it's finished, it's unlike anything Japan has ever seen. The castle rises 7 stories high, unprecedented in Japan. The exterior walls are covered in gold leaf that glitters in the sunlight, visible for miles. The walls feature massive tiger murals painted by Kano Eitoku, Japan's greatest artist. The interior contains rooms decorated with European paintings, Catholic angels, Chinese dragons, and Japanese landscapes all mixed together. It's gaudy, ostentatious, and deliberately provocative. A fusion of East and West, traditional and modern, sacred and secular. Everything about it screams, the old rules don't apply anymore. At the top of the castle, in the 7th floor chamber, Nobunaga installs his personal quarters. Not below the shogun's chambers, not beside the emperor's theoretical authority, above everything, looking down on all of Japan from his golden throne. The symbolism is obvious, and contemporary observers noted it with mixture of awe and horror. Nobunaga is declaring himself the centre of the universe. He's not claiming divine right, he's claiming something more arrogant. He's claiming he doesn't need divine right. His power is self-evident. His authority is absolute because he made it so. Frois, the Jesuit missionary, visited Azuchi in 1581 and wrote that Nobunaga conducts himself in such a way as to make himself appear greater than any worldly king or emperor. Other sources suggest Nobunaga started referring to himself as Tenkabito, the man who possesses the realm. Some whisper that he claimed to be a living god. Whether that's true or enemy propaganda doesn't matter anymore. The perception has become reality. Nobunaga has transcended being just a warlord. He's become a force of nature, an ideology in human form, something that can't be reasoned with or appeased, something that can't last. By 1582, Nobunaga controls most of Japan. He's defeated or subjugated dozens of rival clans. His armies are the most advanced in the country. His economy is thriving. His castle is a golden monument to his supremacy. Victory seems inevitable. It's only a matter of time, but he's also surrounded by people who hate him. Buddhist institutions want revenge for Mount Hiei and Nagashino. Traditional nobles despise his social reforms that elevate peasants and merchants. Rival daimyo fear his growing power. Even his own generals, men who've served him for decades, walk on eggshells around his increasingly erratic behaviour. Because here's what happened. Nobunaga's brutality, once calculated and strategic, has become habitual. He humiliates his own generals in public. He executes people on whims. He demands absolute perfection and punishes the smallest failures with disproportionate cruelty. One of his most loyal generals, Akechi Mitsuhide, bears the brunt of this treatment. Multiple sources record incidents where Nobunaga publicly mocked Akechi, questioned his competence, and threatened him despite decades of faithful service. According to some accounts, during a banquet in 1582, Nobunaga struck Akechi in front of other generals, calling him useless. We don't know if that specific incident is true. What we know is that by June 1582, something has broken inside Akechi Mitsuhide. Maybe it's accumulated humiliation. Maybe it's fear that he'll be Nobunaga's next victim. Maybe it's ambition finally overwhelming loyalty. Or maybe, just maybe, Akechi looks at what Nobunaga has become and decides someone has to stop him. June 20th, 1582. Nobunaga stays at Honnō-ji Temple in Kyoto with only a small guard force. It's strategically stupid. He's in the capital with minimal protection while his armies are scattered across the country fighting campaigns. His main forces are days away. But Nobunaga is Nobunaga. He's won so many impossible victories that he started believing he's actually invincible. He doesn't think he needs protection. Akechi Mitsuhide is supposed to be marching west to support Toyotomi Hideyoshi's campaign. Instead, on the evening of June 20th, he turns his army around. 13,000 soldiers march toward Kyoto, toward Honnō-ji, toward Nobunaga. When his officers question the sudden change of direction, Akechi gives the most famous line of his life. The enemy awaits at Honnō-ji. They don't understand until they reach the temple gates. Dawn, June 23rd, 1582. Nobunaga wakes to the sound of gunfire. He rushes to the window and sees his own soldiers attacking the temple. Akechi's mon, his family crest, flies on the banners. There's no mistake about who's betraying him. There's no escape, no reinforcements, no trick or strategy that can save him this time. For once, Nobunaga is trapped. According to the Shincho Koki, Nobunaga's first words are, "Is this a rebellion? Who is the traitor?" When told it's Akechi, he reportedly nods once. No shock, no panic, just cold acceptance. As if he always knew this moment would come. He fights, of course. Even at 48 years old, even surrounded, even knowing it's hopeless, he fights. He fires arrows from the temple until his bowstring breaks. He fights with a spear until a wound in his arm makes him drop it. He retreats to the inner chambers as fire, always fire with Nobunaga, consumes the temple. His attendants beg him to flee, to try to escape. He refuses. Because Nobunaga understands something they don't. This is over. There's no escape from 13,000 soldiers. No way to survive this betrayal. No path forward except one. And so, in the smoke and flame, Oda Nobunaga commits seppuku. ritual suicide. He refuses to give Akechi the satisfaction of capturing him. He refuses to let anyone parade his head as a trophy. After a lifetime of imposing his will on Japan, he imposes it one final time on death itself. His attendant, Mori Ranmaru, cuts off Nobunaga's head and hides it in the burning temple so the enemy can't find it. Then Ranmaru sets fire to the inner chamber where the body lies and kills himself. The entire temple burns to the ground. When the flames finally die, there's nothing left. No body, no head. No proof that the Demon King is actually dead except the smouldering ruins and the testimony of those who attacked him. Nobunaga vanishes into fire, just like all those he burned at Mount Hiei and Nagashino. The poetry of it is almost too perfect. The man who used fire as his primary weapon, who burned away the old world to forge a new one, who consumed enemies in flames without mercy, is himself consumed. It's fitting, it's inevitable. It's the only ending that makes sense for a man who lived by flames. Here's the darkest irony. Akechi Mitsuhide's rebellion lasts exactly 13 days. When Toyotomi Hideyoshi, Nobunaga's most loyal general, the peasant-born sandal-bearer who rose to command armies, hears about the assassination, he does something that becomes legendary. He's in the middle of besieging a castle 200 kilometers away. He immediately negotiates a truce with his enemy, abandons the siege, and force marches his entire army back to Kyoto, 60 miles in 4 days, with a medieval army. It's a logistical miracle that military historians still study. He catches Akechi's forces unprepared and destroys them at the Battle of Yamazaki on July 2nd, 1582. Akechi's army collapses. His allies abandon him. His rebellion, everything he risked, everything he destroyed, falls apart in hours. Akechi himself dies running through a bamboo grove near Kyoto, killed by peasant bandits who don't even know who he is. His head ends up on a spike in Kyoto, displayed as a traitor. His family is hunted down and executed. His name becomes synonymous with betrayal for the next 400 years. 13 days, that's all he got. Nobunaga is avenged. But Nobunaga is still dead. So why did Akechi do it? This question has consumed Japanese historians for centuries. Akechi left no clear explanation, no manifesto, no detailed account of his motivations. He went to his death without explaining the most consequential decision of his life. The theories are endless. Theory 1, personal revenge. Multiple sources, including the Kawasumi Taikoki, describe Nobunaga's increasing cruelty toward Akechi in the months before Honnō-ji. The public humiliation, the threats, the sense that despite decades of loyal service, Akechi might be purged at any moment. Maybe he struck first out of self-preservation and wounded pride. Theory 2, political idealism. Some historians argue Akechi was motivated by genuine horror at what Nobunaga was becoming. A tyrant who burned thousands of innocents. A megalomaniac who declared himself above all law and tradition. Maybe Akechi saw himself as saving Japan from a monster, even if it meant certain death. A samurai performing his duty by eliminating a threat to the realm. Theory 3, ambition. The simplest explanation, Akechi wanted power. Nobunaga was the only thing standing between him and control of Japan, so he tried to take it. This theory is popular, but doesn't explain why he acted so rashly, with so little planning for what came after. Theory 4, outside conspiracy. Some sources suggest other daimyo, or even the imperial court may have encouraged or supported Akechi's coup, that it wasn't one man's decision, but a coordinated effort to remove Nobunaga. The evidence for this is thin, but the theory persists. We'll never know the truth, and that uncertainty makes the story even darker. Because maybe all the theories are partly right. Maybe Akechi acted from a mix of fear, pride, idealism, and ambition. Maybe in that moment, when he turned his army toward Kyoto, he wasn't sure himself why he was doing it. Maybe he just knew that Nobunaga had to be stopped, whatever the cost. And the cost was everything. So here's my question for you. Is Oda Nobunaga a hero who saved Japan from endless civil war and religious exploitation? Or is he a war criminal who massacred 40,000 innocent people to satisfy his ambition? The answer is yes, to both. He's the uncomfortable truth that history isn't a story with good guys and bad guys. It's a story about power, who has it, who uses it, and what they're willing to destroy to keep it. Nobunaga understood power better than almost anyone in history. He understood that traditions are only sacred until someone powerful enough decides they aren't. He understood that mercy is beautiful until it gets you killed. He understood that changing the world requires breaking it first. He was a demon king. He was a revolutionary. He was a mass murderer. He was a genius. He was a monster. He was a visionary. He was all of these things because real people are never simple, real history is never clean, and real power is the most complicated force in human experience. The next time you see Nobunaga in an anime or video game, remember, you're not looking at a fictional character. You're looking at a real man who really did burn 20,000 people alive at Mount Hiei, who really revolutionized warfare, who really died in flames of his own creation, who really changed Japan forever. The Demon King wasn't just a nickname, it was a warning, one that Japan still hasn't fully heeded or fully forgotten. What do you think? Was Nobunaga a hero or a monster? Drop your answer in the comments, I read every single one. And if you want more dark history that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the past, hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, there are more demons in history than you think, and some of them built the world we live in today.